I saw you asked earlier about playing your own shit. We all play our own shit, of course. We were talking about that earlier, but I think what Aaron and I were talking about was like, if you're just playing a bar gig where it's like a top 40 gig, more or less, and people are just coming to dance and sing the party jams, in that case, no, don't play your own shit. That would be a terrible idea.
I actually do. I have a couple of things that I feel I can get away with.
I mean, it's really all about figuring out who's in front of you, what their vibe is, what they're trying to get into, and then presenting them with something you think is cool that also connects with them. And that's true whether you're playing at EDC or whether you're playing at the local bar. It's always a negotiation of figuring out who's in the crowd, how am I feeling today, what am I excited about, what do they want to hear, and then you meet in the middle. And if you can do it right, I mean, that for me, we're talking about like what's exciting, what's fun about this. When you can really nail that moment and like make something, that energy that exists between you and a crowd, that's the shit, man. That I'm so addicted to that. I chase that 100%. Like it's a magical moment when you can find it. And it's hard to find.
It is hard to find. And even like, when I'll find that moment sometimes when I'm playing at this local place.
And like playing Britney Spears or whatever it is. Like when you hit that moment, it's the same feeling, regardless if you're playing Britney Spears or if you're playing Fortet. It's the same feeling.
Yeah. And like when the crowd is like feeling it, like usually you can like read each other's energy. Like the crowd can read your energy as a DJ and vice versa. And so like if you are up there and you're not feeling it, the crowd is going to notice that. Mm-hmm. Is like what I've noticed. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah, very much so, man. I mean, I could talk about like the philosophy of DJing all day long. There's so many levels to it. It's a beautiful thing to me, but I want to talk more. I want to make sure, because I love all of this, but I want to make sure I talk to you guys about X&G and about the project. And I wanted to talk specifically about where you're at with releasing music, where you're at with future plans, what's coming up for X&G, because you put out 3 or at least like 2.5 albums in your early days, right? Like 2013 to 2017, there was One-Offs, which was, a collection of songs up on Bandcamp, then Anomalies, and then Persona, which are full albums, right? And so I wanted to ask, like, what was the thought back then of doing like full album projects? And now, where are you at with how you think about putting out music?
I mean, I want to do another album very badly. But
albums are tight.
Once like management got involved, everyone was kind of seeing it as like, okay, we got to play the game with like Spotify and all that stuff. And so now, because of the whole Spotify era, it's definitely kind of changed the attention span of like listeners. And so for a while it was just like, okay, like don't do albums because it's all about focusing on like singles and stuff like that. But for us, I feel it's not as rewarding. It's like, okay, here's a song. Whereas like, I think the joy of early SoundCloud days for us was just like making a song and then putting it up that day. It was just that whole process of just being spontaneous. Spontaneously make a song. Fuck it, let's just throw it up. It doesn't matter. And so now like everything is so calculated in terms of like, you got to promote it. You got to go and upload it to distro and wait a couple of days or a couple of weeks or whatever it might be. And so, also you got to put it on a label. And so with all of that, we had never done that before, like labels and singles and all that stuff.
And
it
you
was
were self-releasing
only just like albums and randomly throwing stuff up. Yeah, we were self-releasing. And so now we're like, okay, like we're down to do labels and try all that out. And personally, I like that, but I'm also down to just go back to self-releasing. But I also know that, we need to build relationships. We need to reach new markets and stuff like that. and I'm not opposed to it, but
the game of releasing singles and doing that feels less fulfilling to me, unless there's like a bigger picture, like all the singles are like building towards some collective thing. But personally, a collective body of work, and especially when they're like kind of like LP style sometimes, which one of our albums is, I think at least, means more to me as a person making stuff, putting it out there. It connects more with me because I like the idea of showcasing a journey of, you know, having all those songs be different.
Right.
That's very cool to me. Just as plain as it is, that shit's cool to me. And that, going back to the question about what makes you stoked about making stuff, I get stoked about making a big project with all these little pieces. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That makes me excited. So I like doing that more, putting out bodies of work as opposed to little like trickling
little
out
sprinkles. Do you think that's something you guys are going to do again? Like, is an X and G album 3 or whatever you want to call it? Is that in the works?
We already have the album art.
Oh, amazing!
Or did for like one-offs, volume 2 at least. Made that like last year. So like, there's so much shit that's been that. Yes, yeah, 100%. I hope if we're allowed to, but. I do think that is personally more fun because it just showcases this whole, like, a lot of emotions. And like, I like the idea of going on a little journey. I just like surprising the people.
Sure.
With like, even though we're not huge or whatever, you know, it's not like there's this mass it's not trending on Twitter like, oh my God, Cardi's releasing an album, right? We're just two fucking punks that are like making some shit. But for the people that do listen and do follow and are just totally into it, it's cool to surprise them and make people. I like reactions in all sense of like seeing people's reaction. So you get a cool reaction from being like, yo, boom, all this, here you go.
Right.
And when you self-release and you do it like how we've done it on Bandcamp for free, or like name your price, where it's just like, yo, we're doing this because we like doing this. And this is what represents us, as opposed to like, hey, we're here to make a buck. So here's our one song that will probably in 6 months, it'll get played in the circuit. And then people will be like, you know, and then we'll have the next one.
Well, and I think for a project like X and G, where it's pretty hard to pin you guys down sonically, that makes sense that an album format would appeal more, because when you drop a single, there is that pressure of like, every single has to define us as a project. And whatever the new thing is has to be, you know, whatever we're putting on the pedestal right now, which is hard to do when you make a lot of different kinds of stuff, when you have a lot of different influences. But it actually makes me wonder then about the 2 Point project that you guys have, which is a bit more of a focused sound, right? Like, was that... Yeah. Was the creation of the 2 Point project, and we'll talk more about like what it is and the philosophy and all that, but did you guys make it kind of as a reaction to that, of being like, oh, well, if we need to define something, you know, maybe we can just have a separate outlet for that? It
is definitely a part of it, 100%.
What is 2 Point? For people who don't know, how would you, what's the elevator pitch?
What is it?
So the elevator pitch, I guess, is X and G, because it's so diverse, you know, we do everything with X and G, but to help, or not to help, but just to kind of like break everything down, we kind of started creating these like quote unquote worlds that are separate entities of X and G. So X and G is like the main thing, but or like the umbrella, and then like under that umbrella is like, okay, so anything that is more housey or clubby, let's start pushing towards 2-point. And then like we have another alias that we'll unveil in the future that will be like indie and just like more experimental pop stuff. And so it's kind of just like breaking them all down into these different projects, which I'm not opposed to, but I still like the idea of just like everything being under one alias. Cause like, you know, you think about big artists, like, I don't know, like Frank Ocean or Adele or whoever it might be. And, you know, they're not seen as like, oh, this ballad artist or this piano artist or this rock artist, whatever it might be, they're seen as just purely artists.
I mean, for pop artists, it's almost expected that they'll change album to album.
Exactly. And even like, you know, the Lil Nas album that came out, you know, like that was it had some of the sound that he had done in past stuff, but also it was like a totally new sound for him. And so it's like, okay, with these artists, like they aren't expected to drop a tech house banger every single time or like whatever it might be, a dubstep thing or whatever. It's like, you know, they're doing whatever they're feeling in that moment. And I think that's like how we want to be seen, is that like we're not a house artist, we're not a trap artist or whatever it might be. Like we're just artists. We just make music. That's it. At the end of the day, we are nothing else.
Yeah.
Outside of that.
Well, and I like that you kind of presented the 2-point project as X and G presents 2-point, which it was kind of interesting. It's like it almost felt like you were like making a artist collective with yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of, I've never really seen that before, because usually people will be like, you know, okay, I am X artist, but when I make this kind of music, I am Y artist. But it was interesting having you guys kind of tie the two together and put it all under the same umbrella.
Yeah. So that way it's like, okay, this is still X and G material, but also for those who might want a bit more clarification, this is a 2-point sound. And so like the name comes from like 2.0, you know, like this new version or whatever. And so we were just like, let's just roll with that. But it's still like an extension of X and G at the same time.
I think for any artist, like that's a thing. That's progression. That's what, you know, even for, you know, you're talking about Adele or Frank Ocean or any of that, they've had their 2.0, 3.0 moments as well. You know, like that's a great name.
Yeah, and even like, a great example is like Justin Bieber. You know, like he kind of got seen as like corny, and then he did, what was it, Purpose, and like, you know, Skrillex was all over that, and it kind of like revived and revamped him as an artist, and he was seen as like, oh, now he's like this mature artist, and like, right. I mean, now he has like the biggest song with Killer Roy or whatever. Like, you know, he was like kind of like seen as like goofy and not cool or whatever. Right. Because everyone was like, oh, I don't like Baby or whatever it is, but I fucking love that song. And then like that came out and everyone like kind of like re-fell in love with him in a way. So I think that's also another good example of like a 2.0 type of thing, but still keeping the name.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's inspiring too, right? Like I think it's totally possible to take inspiration from that kind of artistic like turnover, rebirth, or rebranding, or whatever you want to call it. Like we all have to do that on a long enough timeline, you know?
Yeah. And you're going to go through different eras. Like you're not going to want to be doing the same thing you were doing, you know, even like last year, even 2-3 years ago, whatever it might be. Like I feel like as creatives, we go through phases of different things. Like we're like, and like as people, we're growing, our tastes change. Like we're maturing, all sorts of different things like in us. And so like, why would you want to be the same human that you were 10 years ago? You know, like you should always be growing as like how I see it.
Oh man. I mean, if I was the same human I was 10 years ago, life would not be in a good place right now.
Same. I was a piece of shit 10 years ago, that's for sure.
Well, let me ask you guys a couple questions from the chat, from the audience here. Josh from Atlanta says, making music can require a lot of focus, and at the end of the day, you feel exhausted. What's X and G's favorite way to unwind and recharge their batteries? I love the way you asked that, Josh.
At the end of the day, I cook and I try and hit the gym or do some yoga, just like chill. But, like trying to do things that are like therapeutic. Like for me, cooking is definitely therapeutic. And same for Christian too, I feel like. I mean, he's been cooking ever since I met him.
Yeah? You chef a little there, Christian?
Not anymore. I got 5 roommates. There's no room.
Oh, shit.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
That shit sucks now.
But, yeah, I guess that for me, going and like taking a walk, like definitely getting out and just getting fresh air, especially like being stuck at a computer most of the day and being inside most of the day, like going out for a walk and just like stepping away from that is also a good kind of way to reset everything.
Christian, how about you? How do you unwind other than streaming on Twitch for 19 hours a day?
Well, that's most of the time.
I mean, right. Yeah. I guess it doesn't leave much time.
I don't do anything besides stream, make music, now play Halo again and chat with and just hang with the people from chat and a couple longtime friends. Literally the Discord. Join our Discord if you know.
Yeah.
Hanging with everybody, doing the stream stuff is my recharge. It's like, even though it's a thing that takes a full charge to do or somewhat of a charge to get into, it also is the thing that makes me stoked to get out of bed. And so it recharges me in that sense, if that's fair.
Of course, man. It's hanging with friends. It's the online version, but you're just talking about hanging out with your friends, right?
Yeah. The idea of like getting somewhere, taking it somewhere, maybe like it's just like the goal of, the end game, the end goal of it, trying to get there, the whole thinking about what that may be like and whatnot. That recharges me and that makes me just jump back right into it. Right?
Yeah. I like that, man. Because you're circling around the thing without having to do the thing every moment of your life, but it kind of keeps you connected to the purpose and the vision and all of it. And you can it's like, I feel like you can just re-inspire yourself in like short bursts, right?
Yeah. Very short bursts. And I can when I am not streaming, I am usually hanging in the Discord with people. And I'm usually doing stuff that's prep for it's something we need to do. Or just typically getting some thing in the works for the next stream or trying to just get content done for whatever. Just it's all kind of formed around doing this now. My entire life has kind of revolved around this stuff just because I want to do it
right
long term. It's fun.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's honestly, it's cool. And I find it inspiring that it's still so vital to you that you're putting so much of your time and energy into it. That to me I think that's awesome. That's a lot of people who have been doing it as long as you are not that invested anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it is it feeds into my, just not ever having a thing that was mine. So I'm in the moment right now because I've never had a moment for myself. I've never had something that I felt oh, I'm doing good. I've done something cool or anything, let alone feel cool about anything. So a turning point for me it was just seeing like some people be like, hey, this helped me through a hard time watching this, or what have you, comments like that. Or like, dude, being inspired by the music making and stuff, but like connecting with people outside of just like, hey, you like that I can drag shit onto Ableton and make a noise collective. Like beyond that, talking to people, us all being like being on a podcast now, but being podcast connoisseurs in our own right and listening to them in our own free time, right? And like coming from that, just the whole podcast aspect of just shooting the shit with people, right? Is like, that's part of my recharge right there. Like the recharge is happening as I'm expending a charge on the thing. Yeah. I'm like, I'll often be like, this is like therapy for me, right? Get like emotional or whatever doing the stream shit. Cause it is like the one thing I don't know. I don't talk or hang with fam or friends or what have you much. So this is it. This is like what I do. That's and so it takes, but it also giveth in so many ways. And this is the first time I've ever had a thing that felt like anything that like, that I'm like, driving the vessel, and I'm like, oh, I'm making these choices and it's panning out in some kind of way. So the whole recharge is happening for me as I'm doing the thing.
I mean, I think the driving metaphor is very apt, right? Because that's how a car battery works. Like the car battery recharges as you drive the car.
It's true.
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
Love cars.
It's beautiful. Are you into cars?
Not really. I didn't have my license until I was 28.
Oh, shit.
I literally was sitting on my ass.
Wow.
Up until a couple of years ago, just making stuff.
Man, that is a wave. Yeah. That must have made certain things in your life a lot harder, not getting it till then.
I guess. I don't know. Aaron used to give me rides to the doctors, or I had friends in high school. Yeah. I had a couple of girlfriends that would help me out here and there,
Yeah. You made it work.
But I mostly just stayed at home. A lot of the people that I like, that I listen to, like Norm Macdonald, if you know, and
of course. R.I.P.
recently passed away, fucking R.I.P. legend. That guy never had a license.
He
true. Never had one.
That's true. Famously,
stuff like that. Yeah, I always thought it was cool, the idea for a while of just like, you don't need it. Right. And then when I did get my license, oh my God, I love drive. I drive us now, or when we were doing a lot of driving and stuff. I love it. Yeah. Like it is very fun.
I love it too. It's a nice little meditation.
It is a control thing too.
Oh,
the control aspect.
Yeah.
Like being in control of the stream and doing that thing. Now that I drive, it's like, oh, I like controlling the car. You guys get in the passenger in the back. I like being in control. I was talking to someone about this the other day, but it's definitely,
That's funny. That makes total sense, man. That actually, this ties into the next question, which is we were talking about cars. Yash is asking, what is your favorite conversation topic that is not music?
I like looking at other people. I don't know if it's talking point, but I talk and look at and get involved in what other streamers are doing. Half of what I'm streaming is watching other people's shit, right?
But that's, that's actually really interesting, because we were talking earlier about how you don't stay up on like what's happening in the dance music scene, but it sounds like you are staying up on what's happening in like the streaming scene.
Now that I'm in it.
Right.
Now that I'm in it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The back and forth we have of like most of the stream it's a little bit of me making some stuff, but a lot of it is just like interacting back and forth and seeing what people are eating, or why they're copping an attitude over sampling, or
so it's trying to turn not so much about the topic as it is the connection and the hang is what you're saying. Yeah.
The banter between me and another person is my favorite thing to like, whether it's like someone in the Discord or like a chat, like to just text on the thing.
I mean, that's half the fun of fucking doing music and getting to tour and all that is the hang, seeing people backstage or seeing somebody in the green room and, having a conversation that's not at all related to the show you're playing. That's absolutely half the fun of it, when you're in those moments.
I guess for me, I love talking about just like lately I've been watching a lot of like documentaries about like the future of the environment and just like where everything is going.
It's not looking so good for old
not
environment.
Looking so good.
Yeah.
But I definitely, I am someone who thinks about like what happens after death. And I'm gonna get a little heavy.
Oh,
here,
let's go. What does happen after death?
What's that?
What does happen after death?
Right. We don't know. We have no idea. And so I love kind of shooting the shit about that. Like even when I was hanging with Kurt, we were talking about surrounding yourself with good energy and talking about like spirituality and just like how we both grew up with like religious parents and stuff. Just like anything like deep like that, I guess I can go for days and just talk about space or death or spirituality or meditating or talking about things that a lot of people don't talk about. Communication with like friends and partners and just so many different things. Like,
how do you land on the spiritual spectrum at this point in your life? Did you bring any of that religious upbringing with you as an adult?
To a degree. So, I mean, I'm not religious anymore. I would say I'm definitely agnostic, but I do, I guess, kind of cling to some of the Buddhist practices. So I'm not Buddhist by any means, but just like, the idea of meditating and just like letting things happen as they naturally should take its course. And, like then that jumps into the idea of like, do we have free will? Is that a thing? Or is there simulation theory? Like, are we in a simulation? And so, like all those, all these like different possibilities of like why we came here, what our purpose is, where we go after this. And like, I know it's heavy for a lot of people, but just like a lot of those things are just like very fascinating to me because like they are questions that we can't answer.
I mean, to me, conversations about what happens after we die and what is the meaning of all of it. I mean, maybe this is just as you get older, those kind of questions become more interesting. But for me at this point, like I'm not really interested in talking about anything but that. Like I get very bored on like a surface level party conversation. What's your opinion? Do you have a thought of what happens after we die? I'm always curious when someone's raised super religious when they're young, like where they land with it now.
I'm into the idea of like reincarnation. And so like, how there's like people who are seen as like old souls and then there's like new souls. Like the old souls, I feel like are the ones who have been reincarnated a few times. And so they've kind of been doing this process for a while. And that's why they are old souls and maybe like dependent on like how you live your life. Like if you live your life good, then maybe you get a better life the next time around. Or if you're like a shitty person, then you become like an ant the next time or some shit. And so like...
You think it's a higher power controlling that? Who's the judge of that?
That, I have no idea. I know that, it doesn't make sense to me that there's nothing out there that is like, I guess, has a hand in all of this. Like, I guess, like, if any higher power were to exist, I believe in, like, Mother Nature.
Sure.
Because, like, like, there's no way that, like, this whole, like, especially, like, seeing, there was, like, something I just saw recently where one of the big telescopes, like, zoomed in on a portion of space to, like, the left of the moon. And there was just, like, when you zoomed in, there were just, like, tons and tons, if not thousands of different little galaxies. And some of the galaxies were like, I don't even know, like 100 times the size of like ours. And so it's like, what is out there? Like,
so really, I mean, it's for me, what that illustrates is like, we just don't know shit, basically.
We don't know exactly. At the end of the day, like I can go and tell you all my different theories, but at the end of the day, like we don't know shit. Like, maybe at the end of the day, we die and that's that.
You know what? Like, it's funny hearing you say that. It makes me talking about shit like this and then going back to making EDM. There's something about that makes me so happy of like, we have no idea what is happening in our world or our universe. And this is how I'm choosing to spend my time and to do with my life with the short time we have here. This very absurd thing. There's something about that I really get a kick out of that.
Yeah, like Christian is like, oh, you were gonna die. Anyways, back to dragging samples and fighting with people about sampling.
Totally, man. There's something, I don't know what it is, but the absurdity of it makes me like more excited to do it.
Yeah, it kind of is like, okay, like there's like this like distraction, I guess, to where it's like, I can go and like say whatever or shoot the shit with people and argue or whatever it might be. From a social perspective, it might matter, but at the end of the day, it doesn't. And so
now you're getting it.
It doesn't. Yeah, but then there's also like the side to where it's like, there are definitely things that we can do to help everyone's quality of life be better too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's a whole separate thing in my brain.
A whole separate thing. Yeah. Like, I mean, like, I've been looking into like composting and shit because I've like realized I'm like, dude, I know I'm like insignificant by just doing it, but like realizing how hugely it can impact at the same time, it's like, why have we not been taught this?
Right.
And even just like looking into trying to become vegetarian, I still enjoy a lot of like, meat and stuff like that. But even that can be like a huge thing too.
Oh yeah. Meat industry is real bad, man. I mean, I've been vegetarian for a long time. I haven't been
you are? Okay.
Yeah, I haven't been. By my moral code, I should be vegan, but I'm just too lazy or whatever it is to get there.
Same, honestly. Yeah, I should be vegan too, but I'm not there yet.
Right. It's a process. I mean, let me ask you this to bring it back to earth for a second. And
sorry.
No. I love this, man. We could go all day, but it makes me wonder, like hearing both of you guys talk about why you're doing this, what's fun about it, what's important to you about it, why it matters to you, all of that. What is the dynamic between both of you creatively, like as a duo? Like whatever that means to you, whether it's, who does what when you're writing a song, what is it like you two coming together to work on something?
I like your answer for this, Aaron. It's a good answer.
Oh, you got a pre-prepared answer?
Basically, Christian makes a song and I say, sounds good. Let's put it out.
That's right, little boy.
I see what's happening here. I see what's happening here.
I'm in control.
I don't know what the answer is, but yeah, I mean, like typically, at least in the past, like Christian will like come up with an idea. I feel like he's definitely a bit better at like writing than I am. And so over quarantine, like I did the Bower Bop battles and that was like a good exercise for me and like writing and getting better at doing shit as well so that I can like contribute. Because I felt like before I suffered from imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I suffered from imposter syndrome and I was kind of like, for a while, I was kind of the person that would just like add the little sprinkles on top and I would come in and like be more so just an engineer versus like actually contributing to the creative process. And so over quarantine, I kind of like tried to push myself in that way. And so now I feel like I can contribute more and like contribute like ideas or like parts of a song or whatever it might be. But like before I was just like, oh, I feel like I'm not really doing much.
And you were doing what, the engineering, the mixing and the mastering?
I was just engineering
stuff?
And it's like, yeah, that's great. And that definitely helps, obviously. Like I do feel like we both have like our yin and yang process in making music. But now I feel like we can both contribute equally to the table. Christian thinks he can't mix, but I think he can do it. You just gotta.
I know I can. I've just become reliant.
Right. So I think we both like become reliant in our own ways on each other. And so I think by both of us doing our own thing lately, we both are like wanting to be self-reliant in all aspects, but still also be able to have our dynamic as well, if that makes sense.
I mean, what do you think about that, Christian? What is working with Aaron like?
I don't think I'm necessarily a better writer. I think I just have a different way of going about it. The yin yang thing I agree with, but I've literally, the thing I was saying earlier, that like locking myself in bathrooms or coming home from high school and just always having the Mac, popping it open, making stuff, literally the same. I've literally for 11 years now, maybe more, have just been doing that. So I'm just stuck in my way that it's just what I do, which is just making the little ideas as quick as possible, getting it out, instead of like lingering on it, you know? And so working with Aaron is definitely like, he sees the vision of where I'd want to take something and can like take some quick like chicken scratch thing I make where I can hear like where I'm going with things, not like when I first start something, but when I catch the rhythm or whatever,
right?
You know, or catch a vibe off what I'm doing, then I am like, I can see like, okay, I know like 5 steps now what I want to do here. The ADD shit, I mean, for sure, right? It's like, oh, that and then that. And I forget about like 2 of the 5 things. It helps having a person where I can be like, just focus on that part of it, which is the biggest part to me, like getting a somewhat solid thing out there.
Right.
That sounds decent. And then he can make it sound actually better and then add to it in ways where it's not that I'm a better writer, or he's a better writer or worse or what. It's that perspective and back all the shit, right, that led up to that point that like then subsequently makes the approach different for the overall thing. So he comes at it from a different way because of his whole background or influencers or what the fuck he's reading or listening to, whatever the fuck, right? Like everything take an influence from just a whole different life than I am, which will make different things happen with the end product.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like, it is just like doing the same thing I've done for so long, but then being able to have someone breathe life into it, let alone like mix it down properly, which then allows me to go right back to doing more ideas and just like staying on like next to the conveyor belt, right?
Yeah.
And just being like, here's another.
So it sounds like not too many creative differences in general.
There's been times where we're like, no, I don't want that in there, bro. Go away. For sure. But like overall, nah.
Overall, I feel like we're both very open.
Yeah. Maybe before it was like a little less at some points, like, oh, I don't know about this and that. But like nothing matters is now the new mantra. Like in a nice, happy, joyous way, not the nihilistic way, but
right.
Like, who cares? Like if it sounds good and someone can like, it's cool hearing those songs too, where it's like someone has their own take on, okay, so like Steve, I think it was like Steve Aoki and fucking Afrojack and some other fucking people, they all did a song where they all had a section, right? And it was sick that everybody took the same like thing, but they all had their own, it was like a 4-drop track, sure. Whatever the song is, I'm thinking. So everything we do is like there's, we're in the pocket now with having like he'll add just enough of his own distinct like Gaja style or, you know, what have you to a track. And I'll do the same where it feels like we both have a voice that's being, you know, as opposed to like he'll do a second drop or I'll do this. He'll send me something where it's like built out. Kind of, it could be a song that's ready to put out, but then it's like, and this is most of the times, honestly. And then it's like, hey, do what you want with the given sounds and stems and all the shit that's in there. And then it's like, I'll make my own little drop and just add it in there. Like part of the the collab with Dog Blood and stuff is like, we each have sections that like we primarily worked on and did, you know, and can be like, oh yeah, this is some shit I did. And so I think that is like, that's a good synergy for, or like a good place to get in when you're working with someone, as opposed to like both having to agree on every, like, okay, this will go into this. Some people can do that, but I think just being like a little more carefree about it and being like, especially when you have your own outlet, your own personal thing you can do, like whether it's me streaming and making some personal stuff or like Aaron putting out some music on his own or like having his own different outlets. It like helps when you do have those other places where you can just be like, well, I got my own thing going on here that's like all me, you know? So it feels, I can totally come into this group project and be like, oh yeah, that's cool. Fucking run it. Here, I'll do a little section over here. That's cool. Awesome. And then just like, you got to be carefree. You got to not give a fuck.
Sounds like a healthy dynamic, man.
Yeah, you have like that separate space to like completely feed your ego on your own thing now. Whereas before, I think we were both kind of injecting our entire ego, I guess, into X and G.
Right.
Yeah, like
and so now it's like, okay, we can both come in and we're not as like stingy, like, oh, gotta do this, gotta do that.
Because with our outlets and things we like doing or things we do, we're like two very different people. So it is like maybe, to like follow up what Aaron's saying, like two totally different people trying to be like, well, I think this is the thing. I think this is you know, and that's like the only place, the only funnel you have to express yourself. You're going to get a little bit of bottlenecking in the funnel, which will clog the system, maybe create a little friction. So you got to fucking find your own thing outside of that, maybe. And also find your own thing outside of it, which will then hopefully lessen like the effect of feeling like, oh my God, I have to get it all out there. Like in this group project setting, you know, like they need to see me,
right?
You know, they need to know what I do. And like two people doing that, you're going to get a clog. It's everyone's trying to fucking throw toilet paper down the toilet at the same time. It's like, you got to shit together. I don't even know what the analogy.
Yeah. You guys have all been in that situation, together, right? You know? Where we're all shitting together. Yeah.
Bye. Throwing toilet paper down the trash.
I don't know.
No, I know that makes total sense, man. I think that's a healthy dynamic you guys have been able to find, and not every creative partnership, I think, is that healthy. So that's nice to hear. What is the future hold for X and G? You know, beyond like a one-offs volume 2, is there anything else? Either things you're working on right now, or just bigger goals you have in mind that you'd like to happen at some point for the project?
Fame, money, success,
great
power,
goals. Yeah,
royalty,
a royalty, a throne, yeah. Just being able to work with more people. I think we're both like, we fuck around. I think we're somewhat kind of humble. You know, it sounds douchey saying that, but we have been in the very beginning, like I was saying, like shit upon in some instances.
Oh yeah, we
or
didn't
like
really
taking
get to
advantage.
talk about that much.
Just like we haven't made a lot of money. Long story short, we haven't made a lot of money.
And maybe you should have made more money and something happened.
And yeah, maybe there's times where we have done the bulk of something and we have been like put on the back burner and just like used, So it's like, that is apparent. That is part of the whole fucking genesis of that's just part of it. So I think going forward, being able to do exactly what we are doing, but garner somehow more success. And, I want to make some money for fucking sure. I want to get a house. I have 5 roommates.
There you go.
Like literally, that's a goal of mine. Fucking be able to cook, not have getting my roommates texting me pictures of the dishes and being that aren't even mine and be like, do the dishes. I'm like, dude, we've grinded so hard to be like, in the positions that we're in.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know, maybe that sounds douchey too. I think specifically my thing, because I feel a little trapped sometimes, just financially and whatnot, where I'm like making the best, and we both have gotten used to making the best of what we have at our disposal and like what we've been given. I think it would be sick to be able to have more resources or more clout, if you will, to where we can be like those guys who would be able to hit up like any of the typical big artists and be like, yo, you want to make something? We literally every day are just like, my name's fucking Kalab. You know what I mean? It's like, Jesus, it would be cool to be able to, we both are so down to jump into something zero, just very carefree about like what it is we're making or the genre or what it is the person wants to do. We just like the process of creating. And that's why we both fuck with Skrillex so much. Like that guy is less about some specific scene. He's about like just all the scenes and getting in there and working with who the fuck is that? And this person and all this stuff. And he's not just like being, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's like doing it with all the people and giving other people opportunities in the way that we were not given. Like we were given some opportunities for sure, like stuff with Josh and whatnot. But there have been a lot of times where it's like, because of that dynamic of the EDM scene or labels or how this works, how that works, just kind of been pushed aside. So I think like being able to get to a place where then you can be like, yeah, like, come on up. Let's fucking, everybody shits. Everybody is we're all human. Like everybody, the small dogs, underdogs should get a chance too. And like this cesspool of like people being, I don't know. This sounds way jaded.
Well, no, man. It makes me want to say to you, I hope you know how much respect you have from the artist community. And I don't know if you always feel that or not, but like from the biggest to the smallest artist, I think pretty much anyone I've ever talked to is a big fan of yours,
I feel a little bit, I feel like I definitely see it. I see, yeah, for sure. I don't want to seem like an asshole.
You really don't.
I just think that like the thing is set up in such a way to just like, yeah, fuck you. You're small. Like,
oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's when you are the small artist, it feels impossible to get anything done, to get heard, to get seen, any of that, regardless of anything else. You're right about that there's no question about it. But I will say, I guess all I'm trying to say is that I think the work you have done up to this point has a ton of meaning, has a ton of resonance for a lot of people, and particularly in our own community, like in the artist community. I think you are very well respected.
I agree. And often we do get like this whole, you guys are like the producer's producer. Like several people, right? Aaron have been like, that is, you know what I mean? We're like, the producer's producer. I don't know. We kept hearing that where it doesn't, we're not like the main stage, but to the people who are in the scene or like who are tapped in, who are, a lot of them making music themselves for whatever reason. Yeah. Those homies know about us more so than just, we're not out there with, we haven't crossed the threshold. So I think it would be cool to cross the threshold, but with having the whole, I don't know. It would just be cool to finally cross.
Goal. Yeah, that's the ultimate goal, right? I think that's like maybe the best goal of all is to stick to your guns and stay true to yourself artistically and creatively and find a way to break through, right? Like
cool to break through, but while maintaining the same core values from the days past, right? And going into that, crossing into the great, whatever, with having, the resources to be able to be like, okay, let's throw our own show now. People do know who the fuck. So let's put Yash on the lineup and a couple other people and like make people react or feel like, oh shit, I got to be a part of, it's like, I like that shit. I think Skrillex fucks with that shit. That's why I fuck with him so much. And jokingly and not, like I'm always joking about it on stream.
Well, how much contact did you have with him back when you guys were working with Ausla and Josh and doing the Dog Blood collab? Did you get to talk to him much, if at all?
Not at all.
In an email.
Yeah, email.
We've talked. Yeah. Aaron and him have talked extensively in like DMs or something, but not really.
Yeah, not the in-person one-on-one kind
Never.
of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. He saw him. Aaron saw me, fainted. Talk about
it. No, I mean, yeah, I saw him at Hard. Oh yeah, when they did Dog Blood at Hard in like 2017, and I saw him somewhere, and I was like, it just doesn't feel right to go up and just be like, hey, what's up? Because I'm sure that happens to him all the time, and I'm like, I would much rather want it to be like an organic approach.
Yeah.
Instead.
He's the nicest. I mean, nicest dude. I don't know him super well, but every time I've hung out with him or seen him, man, I mean, he has the reputation he has for a reason.
I mean, I see Twonsky's question here, and that you were asking something about like what the future kind of holds for us. And yeah, we do want to move to producing for other people. Like eventually, like we would like to do that. I think is like a main thing. Because touring is fun, definitely like it, but it's also very taxing.
Yeah.
And so I think we would, do touring for a couple more years and just like really go hard at it. And then just kind of like move to the back end, like how like Kenny Beats is doing it now. And then of course like Skrillex as well and other producers, and just like, again, be able to have like this bigger outlet to do all sorts of different stuff. But then, yeah, and then there's like the album, and then there's like, oh, okay, like let's do this EP for this label, or like, we have like our own personal endeavors as well that we want to do, especially like, we are getting older, and like, as you get older, you think about more like, what do I want to do? Like, what makes me happy at the end of the day? And so I think it's just focusing on that too. And yeah, so we have our hands kind of like in all sorts of different pockets, I guess, avenues, whatever.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, that's like the beauty and the chaos of this career, right? Is there's at any given time, if you're really pushing, there's like 5 or 6 different things, any of which could pop off at any time, could be the crazy thing at any time, or none of them will pop for years, and it's like, and it's really, so much of that is out of your control at a certain point. And it's really about just showing up and being persistent and, staying in love with the work and staying excited about what you're doing. We're hitting a lot of the same notes in this conversation. It's actually kind of nice because I think we're sort of zeroing in on whatever the take home point of this podcast is. But I think it really is just about that persistence, that showing up, and just, really trying to constantly remind yourself why you started doing it, why you love it, what about it is important to you, and not getting distracted by all the other stuff as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be consistently doing you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do what makes you the most happy at the end of the day. But also, like leave room to grow too. For improvement, like, get feedback and like be willing to accept that feedback instead of being like, no. And I mean, like, if you don't want the feedback, then okay, that's fine too. But I definitely do
and
feel
that's
like
so true, man. Yeah, to like be open to changing what you're doing as well, right? Like, because certainly, I think if we figured out one thing in this whole conversation is that we don't have all the answers, and I don't think any artist does, even the artist with the clearest vision. So I think, you always have to leave that space of like, maybe there is something I could change or do differently, as long as it doesn't sort of compromise, the core of why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. As long as it still makes you happy in the process, then.
Is there anything we haven't talked about yet? Anything else that's on your guys' minds? Anything else that's going on with X and G? Anything else you want to get out there?
I don't think there's any more really releases for the rest of the year. There might be a remix coming out. But outside of that, I think we're just kind of honing in on everything for next year. So I would like to put out either this One-Off Volume 2 or some type of album at the end of next year, maybe like in the fall or something, just because like I know we both have been itching to do that. And then, we're working with like a bunch of different artists. We have all sorts of different music in the works that I think will be unveiling next year. It was definitely a pretty quiet year for us this year. So it seems like if we line everything up right, there'll be a lot of stuff coming out next year.
Well, I have a question that I ask at the end of each one of these episodes. So I'm going to ask it to you, and you can answer separately. Just looking for a time in your life, like a moment, a memory, could be from any time in your life, when in a single moment, music really deeply affected you, really had like a deep impact on you in that moment. And that's meant to be a very broad question. There is no wrong answer, kind of the first thing that pops into your head.
I got way into making chill stuff around the time, like my mom got hit by a car in 2012.
Oh my God.
And I was like, I didn't have a lot of, she's alive. She's kicking, doing it. Good. But back then it was really bad. And I remember like specifically because like, it was just a weird time, like with that kind of stuff happening. That's just a weird thing.
Oh yeah.
That, blindsided me. And I was doing music at the time, but I was making like bangers and stuff. And that shit made me not want to do that. It made me like, there was no drive to be like, yeah, my mom got hit by a car. Let's make a sick drop. I was like, what the fuck? So like, I got very like emotionally locked into all these like, these Apollo artists, or it was like an offshoot of like R&S. I don't know the label. These like people like Synchro and like all this stuff and Burial. I remember like crying and listening to the like feeling really sad back then, and then listening to those artists, and they were making like it was electronic, but it was very emotional. Instead of like, it wasn't all hype party or just like some nice little jam. It like felt very, like Burial shit sounds very like cold.
Yeah.
And like, you're like on your own desolate little island when you listen to it, and you're like, gets you thinking about some shit, some of those songs, at least for me. And so that stuff like Burial and, Apollo Records and the artists that were on there. Who are other people, Aaron, aside from Synchro? They were like the people he would work with. That it was just very like it inspired. Yeah, Aaron. Aaron has like a shirt of Apollo, I think, something. But that shit made me feel like more in tune with like a different. Also, I found James Blake at that time.
Oh, yeah.
Same time. And it was old. It was like Wilhelm Scream era James Blake, like pre Jimmy Kimmel, friggin' retro, whatever. So it was like I like went down this little path being all like sad and like, trauma, and discovered all this shit, which then in turn made me start to make more things that were like, oh, wow, you can make emotional shit in Ableton or what have you, FL, just on the computer. And it doesn't have to be like that. That was like an eye opener for me, but also like a nice little surprise, a cool thing to find, because it really helped me during those times to be able to hear such like emotive things when a lot of stuff in my surroundings felt very just like, I don't know. I didn't have a lot of like support at the time. And that was supportive to me in a big way. Literally just finding like that style of music and all these chill people.
That's incredible, man, because I think it's multi-layered, right? Like it's not only finding the right music at the right time to help you through a hard time, but then also having that be a moment of realization that like unlocks something for you as an artist as well. I mean, that's a crazy, crazy moment, man. And I mean, to be sparked off, of course, by something that like scary and awful, of like your mom being hit by a car. That's a lot to process. But I mean, it's kind of, in the end of it, a beautiful story, because it sounds like you were kind of able to use a lot of that chaos to, grow as a person, which is like, at the end of the day, I think what we've really been talking about here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was super helpful in like a weird cold time to find weird cold music and be like, yeah, this shit rocks. It like physically makes the hairs on my arm stand up a little bit. Some of those songs where it was like a physical sensation coming from like only hearing a bunch of like just fucking bangers, and being able to step away from that and be like, wow, this whole other world that I had no idea about. And it kind of mirrors mine in its own way, or like makes it like provided like a comfort of like, it's like, oh, these tracks are with me in a similar way. I don't know. Felt like the stuff I was finding at the time was, it mirrored what I was feeling and what I was going through. And I was like, holy shit.
Well, what about you, Aaron?
Kind of like what you were saying, like music was like there for you. Like, I guess I kind of see music as the same way, where it's like, I mean, I guess for me, like I've moved a lot and people have come and gone in my life a lot, and I've never really had like a constant, be it like a friend or a partner or whatever it might be. And so like the one thing that has kind of always been there has been music. So I kind of see it as like my best friend, because it's like, it's never going to leave you. It's always there for you. And then, around or like how he was talking about, he found like this very like introspective music. For me, I found like ambient music. I also found Synchro, this other artist Submerse from this label Project Moon Circle, and like Aphex Twin and Telephone Televi, all that different stuff. And so it just kind of, I almost like saw myself as like, I'm in like this movie, and like this is like the soundtrack to my movie, like, which is so cheesy, but it's also like, it gives you a bit more of a sense of purpose. Especially, like back then I was like, I'd have no idea like what I want to do, and just like feeling very lost at the time. And then also like parents were like they were on the verge of divorcing, which ended up finally happening, but it was like a very like toxic environment at home and stuff. And so it was kind of like what he said, like that escape, like, you got away from everything. You didn't have to face the noise of like, oh, being like, for me, like getting bullied at school or whatever it was, like anything that like came at you, you could just like escape with music. And so like, it kind of ties back into like when we first met, we were both making that more chilled stuff because it had recently like impacted us in those ways. And I think that's like why we kind of like connected so well, is because we both like had a love for that style of stuff. Whereas like everyone at the time was just like making dubstep and making what was hot, especially here where like Christian mentioned before, like people are like 7 years behind. And yeah, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's great too, man. And it's interesting that that's around the time you guys met, was when you were both sort of going through those revelations or those changes or whatever you want to call them, and discovering these new sounds and also making these new sounds. Like, I wonder on a deeper level, even if you didn't talk about it back then, I wonder if that was part of some of the early connection of it,
Trauma bonding.
Yeah, kind of, right?
Yeah. I mean, 100%. Like, we were both in, I feel like, frail states to where it was like, oh, like this is your outlet. This is also my outlet too. And it like kind of caused that first connection and bonding, trauma bonding and all that stuff.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. That's fascinating, man. And I think there's something really beautiful in like coming from that place and, everything you've made out of it, right? Like, it's all this fucking X and G music that didn't exist before you guys had met. And now it's all there. And yeah, I don't know. It's a beautiful thing, man. I'm glad you guys found each other, but I'm also glad you're still doing it, man.
Lots more to come.
Yeah, definitely trying, figuring our stuff out. It's obviously still been a learning experience and process, but I think now we both feel a lot more confident in ourselves and like where we want to go. Because especially like when you're first exposed to the industry and just like, oh, all this stuff is happening, you're just like overwhelmed at first. And you're like, well, so much is coming at me. Like,
how do I navigate it? How do I have any kind of agency or any kind of power? Any of that. It's all chaos at the start.
It's all chaos. But once you kind of dial it in and figure out like what you want to do, like what makes you happy, then it's like, okay, like I'm back in that same headspace where I was before all that happened. And like, that's where you should always try and stay, is like in that headspace that you were at when you first started, like why you got into it in the first place. Never lose that if you can.
Yeah.
Because it's like the purest way of like making art.
When you might lose it too. I think it's all about if you lose it. I mean, I've lost it. I had to re-find it more than once, like that's part of it too, is like you might lose it, but you always got to try to get it back at the end of the day, try to figure out what gets you back there.
Yeah. That's totally fair. Like it naturally happens where you lose it, you come back. It's like a journey. If anything,
yeah,
it's
man,
definitely a journey.
That's the whole thing. There's another little motto for you, man. You got to embrace the journey, right?
Yeah, straight up, embrace the journey, and just do what you love.
100%.
Yeah, I think that's it. Man. I think the edit point to end this episode is just do what you love.
Mm-hmm. I have a whole other couple paragraphs. I have two things. One thing is like going with what Aaron said, like having doing Twitch now and then also doing music. Like, I don't even know what's fun and what's a job now. Like, it all is just like fun. And that is 100% like you have to find some shit you dig doing at the same, like, and lean into it. Even if it seems like sometimes it'll seem really risky to like take a chance on some shit you like and doing that long term. But you gotta, spread the eggs, different baskets, and like find two things you really like, even, or like definitely putting yourself in a place where you're waking up enjoying the things you're doing. I feel proves way more beneficial in the long run than just subjecting yourself to something because like just some job or whatever, because it may make you the most money or whatever. And maybe money buys some amount of happiness, right? Of course. And give, financial freedom is pretty awesome from what I've heard, but but neither of us are like financially free in any way, right, Aaron? Like we're still kind of like churning shit out, but we've continuously done what it is we want to do, and we still do. But I feel more fulfilled in doing so, even though the bank account number could use a couple more zeros for sure. But I feel a more like genuine fulfillingness by like following what it is I want to do. And that goes back to the other thing about like what makes you jazzed to do stuff is just literally like, get out of bed and want to be like, oh, let's do the thing. Definitely is just finding a way to do what it is you want to do and not let any excuses get in between you and that thing. And a lot of people will be like, well, I work this job, so I'm too tired or like too whatever to whatever. But they're on social media and doing all this other shit that's like a waste of time. You got to like, not saying all social, here we go. I did have paragraphs, I guess. but it is just like, I think it's just really good for the mind to do what the fuck you want to do, regardless of all the naysayers being like, what? You don't want to. I still get job offers from my parents, like now, that are like, hey, you could be working at UPS. You could be making $100,000 a year with full dental insurance. I get those now after everything, and my parents just want the best for me and to have a good future. Totally makes sense and is valid, right? But it is like, there will always be things that are like, don't, like, maybe you should do, people telling you or things telling you like, oh, maybe I should just take the safe bet and do that thing. But it is like, it will feel fulfilling after a while, if not at first, if you just like lean into the thing that you feel you were put on the planet to do. The thing, and not even that deep, but just whatever it is that makes you literally happy and feel good. And that's what life should be about. It's like all these people working these jobs to get the money and do all the thing. I imagine it's so they can feel happy because they got all that money. But you can find happiness without having to like, you got to risk it to get the biscuit a little, and along the way, find your rhythm in that process where it's like, I feel good. And I don't even have all the extra stuff that may come along with like, having that.
It's
crazy
the journey
job
again, right? Like it's back to that. Because I think that, say you are a person whose goal is to like make millions of dollars, it's never going to be enough. Those people, it's not like they get however many millions they wanted originally and they're like, okay, I'm done. It's like, it's never enough. The only goal that I think is a valid goal, the only goal I accept from people really is, and I try to accept for myself is, what's going to make me happy? That's really, you just got to work towards that. Thing. And then whatever happens incidentally with that is a bonus,
Right. If you're in the rhythm of being happy, everything else that happens around you, whether it be good or bad, it's like the bad hopefully won't affect you that much because you're like, well, I still do that shit I love. So it's like, okay, well, that sucks, but I got this thing. I got my rhythm. And then the good will only add as like sprinkles on your pre-existing sundae that you're chomping on, right? It's like, oh shit, like throw that bitch on. We got a cherry on this now. We're already doing like I was good with the banana and the ice cream, but now it's like, okay, sprinkle that. I don't like buy new phones, or I don't have, my car is like rickety and old and it yells, but it's like, it's more fun that way. Try to live with, I don't know. Yeah, I could go on. Fuck.
Thank you guys for doing this.
Thank you. Have us on again.
Seriously.
Anytime. Let's do it. All right, y'all. Peace.